Hey guys, it is Jenna. What is up? And welcome back to the Board Game Garden. Today we are doing a Kickstarter preview and taking a look at this game right here. This is On the Underground, Paris and New York, which this might look a little bit familiar to you. There is another version of this game called On the Underground, London and Berlin. I'll put the picture of it right here, but fun little story. When I first got into the hobby, I distinctly remember seeing this game and really being interested in it. I just loved the way that the box looked with the like watercolor rainbow with like the city skyline. I just loved the way it looked, and I looked into it on BGG, and it was a game that I like wanted to get, and then I just like couldn't find it after that. And I think what happened is that it went out of print, and then Ludi Creations has come along. So now Ludi Creations is publishing both the London and Berlin version, and then they're also doing a Kickstarter for this new version with two new maps, which is Paris and New York, which are like two places that I love. Francis and I have been to New York, and we do want to go to Paris, which it's pretty cool because the front side is Paris, and then you turn it around and the back side is New York, or this could be the front side if you like this one better. I do think I like the New York one better. I think it's very cool. But yes, I just wanted to tell you guys that story, and I think it's very cool that it's like a full circle moment of me seeing it when we first started the hobby, and now I am getting the opportunity to cover this one. So huge thank you to Ludi Creations for sponsoring today's video. And yeah, without further ado, I'm going to put you guys down to the table and we are going to see how this game plays. We're gonna come back, I'll do a quick discussion, and then that will be the video. So hopefully you guys enjoy. Definitely go and check out the Kickstarter campaign. I will have it linked down below if it's something that after watching this video you think you'd be interested in, or the people around you and the people you're playing with are interested in. But yeah, let's see how it plays. In On the Underground, players compete to build the most valuable and convenient transportation network in Paris or New York. Each players control a certain amount of lines depending on the player number, and their hopes are that the passenger uses their lines in order to get the most points at the end of the game. Just a quick note that this is a prototype, so everything that I'm showing you here in the overview is subject to change once the Kickstarter is fulfilled. But quickly, before we get into the gameplay, let's quickly go over all of the components. So first off, we have the board that is two-sided. One side is New York and the other side is Paris. You also have all of the different colors of lines. You have the passengers, which there are a few components here that are available in the deluxe version and not in the basic version. And lastly, you have the start player marker, some map references, some player tokens, some branching tokens, as well as cards and components for each of the maps. But with the components out of the way, let's get into the gameplay. So starting off the game, each player will get one of the player tokens depending on the player count. So in a 4 or 5 player game, each player will control 2 colors. In a 3 player game, each player will control 3. And in a 2 player game, each player will control 4. You will then choose which map you want to play with, either the New York or the Paris map. It is recommended that for your first game you do play with the New York map, just because it is a little bit more quick, because the passenger will be going to 2 destinations instead of 1 per turn. And then you have the Paris map, which is recommended for people that are a little bit more experienced with the game. But regardless, if you do pick one or the other, they do play very differently, and we'll get into that a little bit later in the overview. Whichever map you do decide to play with, take those coordinating cards, place them beside the board, and flip 4 face up, and those will be your starting destinations. The basic edition of the game does come with these more simplistic cylindrical destination tokens, but if you do get the deluxe version, they come with 2 different styles, one for the New York side and one for the Paris. But whichever ones you do decide to play with, place those on the first 4 destinations, and then also place the passenger on the start station, which is the spot with the location icon on each board. The player to last use an underground transportation system is the start player, and it is now time to play On the Underground. So overall, each player will be taking 4 actions on each turn, but for the first turn, things will be a little bit different based off of the first turn chart in the rulebook. But overall, on each turn, players will have 2 different options of things they may do. One being placing a track, and 2 being taking a branching token. Once a player has collected 2 branching tokens, they are allowed to use those to branch off of a track that they have already made. Typically with placing tracks, you must place it on either end of an existing track to extend it, but paying 2 branch tokens allows you to branch off an existing line. So on a player's turn, they choose to do 4 actions, any combination of placing a single track or taking a branch token. In this example, the player decided to place 4 tracks. And once that player has taken all 4 actions, the passenger will move, and the passenger will always want to take the easiest and the quickest path to the nearest destination. When traveling, the passenger likes to avoid unnecessary hassle. They prefer to take the underground, and they do not like to switch lines if they do not have to. The passenger will choose the route that involves the least amount of empty spaces. If 2 or more routes involve the same amount of empty spaces, the passenger would choose the route with the fewest or no lines. Basically, this passenger is really lazy and just wants to sit for as long as possible and not have to walk. Once the passenger has moved 1 or 2 destinations, each track that was used by that passenger gets that player 1 point. The destinations that were visited that turn, the cards get discarded and new ones get flipped. Like I mentioned before, New York is a little bit faster paced, so each turn 2 destinations are visited by the passenger, but for the Paris map, only 1 destination per turn is visited. Once those cards are flipped, you place those new destination markers on those new locations, and it is now the next player's turn. That's everything for the basics of the gameplay, but let's get into the differences of the maps and the additional scoring opportunities that each of them bring. These reference tiles are a great addition to the game and allows you to quickly reference the scoring for each individual map. Which, starting off, let's get into the New York map. Like I mentioned, New York is a little bit more faster paced, where the passenger will be going to 2 different destinations per turn, and overall, the game just runs a little bit quicker and is a little bit more simple. So let's start off with the first of the scoring opportunities. These here are terminus stations, and when players connect one of their lines, they will get 2 points and a branch token. The blue spaces, or national rail spaces, grant that player 1 point when they first connect a color to that space. Any additional connections with that color does not grant the player a point. There is then the clusters on the board. These are the purple or pink areas on the board, and these represent the high traffic areas in New York, and you're wanting to connect these. So the more and more of these that you do connect, the more and more points you do get. The first 2 that you connect, you get 1 point. The second one that you connect, you get another 2 points, then 3 points, then 4 points, and so on and so forth. And then lastly, you have the water crossing. On the player's turn, they must be able to create both of them on either side, creating a bridge on 1 turn. So you cannot stop halfway over the water. And once you get 3 of these connections, you do get 3 points. And those are all of the scoring opportunities in New York. Let's move on to Paris. So like I mentioned, Paris is a map that is kind of designed for players that are a little bit more experienced with the game of On the Underground, but let's get into some of the scoring opportunities. So with Paris, you do have a little bit of set collection with the landmarks. So before you start the game, you will place randomly the landmarks on all of the green spaces on the map, and players will get 7 victory points for each set of the 5 landmarks they do collect. Each player will then receive 2 secret objective cards, and these will be worth either 3 or 5 points, and those are the amount of points that you will get for connecting all 3 of these destinations with 1 line. And you can connect these 3 destinations with more than 1 line, and that's how you can really rank up some points. On the board, the blue spaces are RER stations, and these will grant the players 1 point per connection after the first one. So the first connection gets you 0, but any others after that is 1. So in this situation, the player would get 2 points. And lastly, when connecting to a red space or a terminus station, the player gets to choose one of 3 options, either 2 points, 1 point and 1 branch token, or 2 branch tokens. And speaking of branch tokens, in the Paris map, they have a few additional purposes. One being that at any time, a player may use 2 branch tokens to place a track in a spot that they wouldn't otherwise. So in this example, a track has already been placed, but they can use 2 branch tokens to place theirs there as well. And also, they may use 2 branch tokens to use as any of the landmarks that they are missing. And that is everything for the 2 different maps. The general gameplay is the same, but each map offers different scoring opportunities, which makes them feel very different. But players will continue to play turns until there are no cards left in the pile, and that is when the finishing scoring happens. So in the Paris map, each players then calculate their score for their secret objectives, and whichever player has the most points at the end of the game wins. I should also mention for all of my solo gamers out there that they do have a solo variant, or what they call the Underground Challenge, which is available in the deluxe edition, and also they do have it available just separately on the side during the campaign. And that is everything for the overview of On the Underground, Paris and New York. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you have any questions, definitely leave them down in the comment section, and I do have the link to the Kickstarter down below if this is something that you guys think you would enjoy. Okay, so that is the overview for On the Underground, Paris and New York. Like I mentioned, I do want to do a little discussion at the end here. I did this in my Zoo Tycoon Kickstarter preview, and I enjoyed being able to just chat a little bit after the overview, just to give you guys a little bit more information and stuff like that. So, On the Underground, Paris and New York, one thing that I really think is great about this game is that there are two completely different ways to play it. I think this is amazing for replayability. The Paris is more for experienced players, whereas New York is a little bit better for playing it for the first time. You can kind of play that one, and then if you feel like you're doing great in the New York one, you can switch over to the Paris one, and the mechanics between the two are pretty similar, but then there's different ways in order to score, and it really changes up how you think of the game and what you are doing in the game. So I love that they've done that. They also did that with the Paris and Berlin. There's a two-sided board, London and Berlin. They have two different boards that play pretty differently, and then these two play differently as well. There's a little bit of set collection in the Paris board, which I love. In the New York board, I really love the connecting the splotches and stuff like that. That's enjoyable. So you're kind of having to focus on two different things. You're focusing on the lazy passenger, which is the most hilarious theming in this game, is that you're literally trying to get this lazy guy around town. But what was I talking about? You have to focus on two things, getting the lazy guy around town, but then also trying to get points in different ways by connecting your routes to different things. So it's really fun to have those things to kind of think about. Another great thing about this game is that it is very, very easy to learn and very easy to teach, which is great. I love being able to cover games that are great for people that are new to the hobby, but then also people that have been in the hobby for a while that are trying to get other people into the hobby. I feel like this would be a great one to get to the table if you have friends coming over that aren't necessarily in the board game hobby as of yet. They're pretty close, but you really want to, introduce them to some approachable games. This one is a great one for that. Like I said, the rules are simple enough, but I think it's one of those games where the rules are simple and it's easy to play, but as you play it, you can really master it as you play it over and over again. And I did this in the Zoo Tycoon Kickstarter video where I actually compared Zoo Tycoon to Ark Nova, because a lot of people I feel like would be comparing those. And in this situation, I feel like a lot of people will be comparing this to Ticket to Ride, which again, Ticket to Ride is another game that is great for getting people into the hobby. It's very approachable, and this one I feel like is in that exact same realm, but there's just a little bit more to it that makes it more interesting to me. You're not just focusing on making your routes and that's it, which I really enjoy Ticket to Ride. Francis doesn't so much, but I'm hoping that this is going to be one that he will enjoy more and one that we can get to the table more, fingers crossed. But yeah, I really think that this is a good one in kind of place of Ticket to Ride. If you are looking for something that just has a little bit more to it. There is the additional things that you're focusing on, like I mentioned. I will say though that there's not really too much to compare with Ticket to Ride and On the Underground. I am just comparing the approachability of them and the theming of making routes on a subway system or a train system, but the gameplay of these two games are completely different. Ticket to Ride, you are literally just making connections between two different places. Whereas this one, you're having to think a lot more about what route the lazy passenger is going to take, what places is he going to go to. In the New York version, you're going to 2 different places, whereas in Paris, you're only doing 1 at a time. So you're thinking about where he's going to go and how you are able to create your routes that he will take. So that is very different than Ticket to Ride. And then also, like I said before, you have that additional getting points from different things on each map. That adds a little bit more of a complexity to the game over Ticket to Ride. So I think that is everything that I wanted to discuss about On the Underground Paris and New York. Just some things that I really liked about the game, as well as who I think this would be great for. I feel like this is a great approachable game. Easy to learn, easy to teach, and also is pretty quick to play considering the type of game it is. It is only an hour, which is great to just set this up, play a game, and then put it away. So yeah, that is On the Underground, Paris and New York by Ludi Creations. I will have the Kickstarter link down below if this is something that you guys think you would be interested in. But yeah, that is everything for this video. If you guys enjoyed, give it a big thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. I would love to have you here in the garden. We are getting so close to 10K, which is crazy. My goal is to get to 10K by the end of the year. If we don't, that is totally fine. But if you guys want to join the garden, I would really appreciate it. Also, be sure to comment down below if you guys want to chat about On the Underground. If you have any questions, be sure to put them down there. And yeah, I love you guys so much. Remember, you are somebody's reason to smile, and I will see you in the next board game video. Bye, friends.